is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
And 2:03 the time. Glad you're along. I hope you had a good weekend. Rick Roberts with you, the court of public opinion, your voice, your opinion, and your attitude on the issues of the day. Did you make it to March for Our Lives? Anybody in the studio? Did you guys make it? Did you go?
What was that?
I missed it. Sorry.
Well, I'm going to take you there. I'm going to take everybody there. Coming up in just a little bit, I'm going to take you there. I'm going to let you listen to March for Our Lives. Of course, I guess couple thousand showed up in North Texas. The organizers in D.C. said, oh, my God, it was like a gazillion and three people. According to the Park Service, they use that imaging stuff. They said it was a couple 100,000. It doesn't matter to me whether there was 2 or 200,000. What are they saying? Does it make sense? Here in Texas, they range from students to teachers to toddlers to retirees. And, of course, those toddlers are very well informed, are they not? Thousands marching through downtown Dallas on Saturday afternoon is part of this coordinated protest around the country calling for gun control. And I'm going to take you to Los Angeles. Los Angeles, one of the biggest marches, one of the biggest protests. The March for Our Lives protest in Dallas. It was held in conjunction with hundreds of marches across the nation. And, of course, it's all because, and I have to be careful here because people are predisposed to hear what they want to hear. So sometimes they hear something I did not say. So I've got to be very careful. That's why I'm going to take you. Now, I don't know how many of you made the march. If you made the march, give me a call and give me your perspective. But if you didn't go to the march, I'm going to put you right in the middle of it in about 4 or 5 minutes here. And then I'm going to let you react, all right? Of course, the marches, as I said, all over the country. Everybody, I get very emotional, mostly kids. There was signed thoughts, prayers marked out, action instead. Planned Parenthood is an assault weapon. Jesus cares, and yes, he does, but I'm not exactly sure what he thought of this. Take our lives seriously, don't take our lives. I mean, it just goes on and on for days. Let kids read books, not eulogies. Okay, well, who would be against that? But the government's done a pretty good job of dumbing people down, getting them where they want to get them. And luck, if you were there, love to hear from you. But a lot of people weren't. So I'll fill that gap in for you. From the steps of the Tarrant County Courthouse to the plaza outside Dallas City Hall, kids and their supporters demanded to be heard. And can I say this nicely? I'm not sure what they're trying to say. As you will hear in just a second, woefully uninformed. Not just the kids, a lot of the adults. I'm standing up for what I believe in, trying to make a change. That was well, I'm not exactly sure what her name is. Last name's Lacey. She's a student at Keller High School. A lot of teenagers were driven to attend the March for Our Lives by the school shooting. I've been following it for a while. Then I saw it started blowing up on social media. Look, I agree. You're probably very emotional about this. But this is one of those things where you almost have to try and inform yourself before you protest. Otherwise, what are you protesting? You don't know. And when I take you there, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Police in Dallas estimated between 4,000 and 5,000 people attended the march downtown. No arrests, no incidents, and that's good. Guess what? A voter registration drive at each march was included to show that these young people can mobilize not only historic rallies, but also a powerful political base. One kid said, "This is our generation's revolution." Police said between 6,000 and 7,000 people attended the march in Fort Worth. So quite a few people. Yeah. Does it surprise you that there were voter registration folks at each one of these rallies?
Of course not.
It doesn't surprise you at all?
You need to drive those votes.
Yeah.
Get those votes, baby.
There you go. Who was it that said never let a good crisis go to waste? Who was that?
Well, I think we always say Mr. Schumer, right?
Look, I don't want to say anything mean-spirited. I truly don't. But as I said, when you hear these people, you just shake your head and say, wait a minute. Before you start going out in the garage and making the signs and calling the media, at least know what you're talking about. Yes, you know that 17 kids were killed, a horrific tragedy. But the peripherals that they're protesting, we want gun control. If you have automatic weapons, you can have a bomb. What? A nuke? No. Look, like I said, I got to be very careful because I don't want to say something that's going to be misperceived. So I'm going to take you, if you were busy this weekend, maybe you had family stuff to do or maybe you worked or whatever it was, you just couldn't make it to the big march, right? Well, I'm going to rectify that for you in just a second. Rowdy in Arlington. Rowdy, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
Hi, listen, thanks for helping me out last time. Look, this is not a gun issue. This is school violence. School violence starts at home. This is a parenting issue. It's either the parenting or the lack of parenting. If you teach your kids not to be racist, if you teach your kids not to be exclusional, if you teach your kids to respect the other kids in the class as they want to be respected, there won't be a problem. When I went to school, it was about fighting after school. Sometimes you brought a knife. Once in a while, there was a gun, but it's very seldom. This is a parenting issue, Rick.
Where did you go to school? Hell's Kitchen in New York or what? We had fistfights and stuff. Oh, New Jersey. Okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, when I went to school, we had fistfights, but no one ever brought a gun or anything like that. I mean, there were guns out in the car. Well, yeah. New Jersey, I'm sure, is a little different. Well, Rowdy, I'm guessing you didn't make it to the big march. I'm guessing most of you had things to do that took priority and couldn't make it to the march. So I will take you and put you right in the middle of the march, and I'm going to do that next on News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 2:16 the time. Are you ready? Are you ready to go to the march for your life? Okay, but first, a school superintendent testifying before state lawmakers, just a genius. This guy is an Einstein. There's no doubt about it. This is a school superintendent testifying before state lawmakers. Let's just drop in and see what he's got to say, shall we?
Every classroom has been equipped with a 5-gallon bucket full of Riverstone. If an armed intruder attempts to gain entrance to any of our classrooms, they will face a classroom full of students armed with rocks, and they will be stoned.
Ah, there we go. All right. Yeah, I think this is Superintendent of the Year, don't you? And that's a school superintendent in Florida, speaking before the Florida State Legislature. I'm sorry. Did I hear that right?
Every classroom has been equipped with a 5-gallon bucket full of Riverstone.
Yeah.
If an armed intruder attempts to gain entrance to any of our classrooms, they will face a classroom full of students armed with rocks, and they will be stoned.
Well, there you go. That'll do it. Yeah, well, he's probably getting Superintendent of the Year, I would imagine. But I digress. You're getting all kinds of information these days, right? Okay, Flecka Talk. You know what? I play that all the time. I'm a big man on the street. We used to do that live. When he had larger staff, but we would send some of the assistant producers on the street with a recording device and so on. If you didn't get a chance to go to the March for Our Lives, And, of course, it was held nationally. We had, thousands upon thousands in Fort Worth and Dallas. I'm going to take you to one of the biggest ones in Los Angeles, all right? Now, you got to be very careful because, obviously, there's sensibilities that need to be respected here. I mean, some of these kids came from that high school. The others, I'm not sure where they came from or where their education on the issue came from. Because one of the primary things I would think before you throw a protest, you probably ought to be informed on what's going on, don't you think?
Hey guys, it's Fleckus. This week we're at the March for Our Lives, downtown LA. What's your sign say?
It says the NRA is a terrorist organization.
Very cool. And you think ISIS is a terrorist organization?
I do, yeah.
You think Al-Qaeda?
I do.
Hamas?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're all in the same category to you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Brian, hello. Brian wants me to sign his MAGA hat. This is my first signature, guys, my first autograph. I'm Austin.
Oh, cool.
What's your name?
Well, I go by Doppel Bowie. Basically, everyone here, it could all be boiled down to they don't want guns.
Would you be down for guns are illegal?
Yes.
We don't need guns.
You lean more towards the all guns?
I'm on the all guns thing.
If you look at a weapon of war, if you could have an AR-15, why couldn't you have a nuclear weapon?
Let me think about that.
I mean, it makes sense that you should not have a really potent weapon.
Do you think handguns should be legal or illegal?
Yeah, sure. They could be legal. It's
legal or illegal?
Legal, as long as you're not capable of killing dozens of people within a minute.
But the majority of mass shootings do use handguns, though.
That's a bummer.
A wise man made a good point to me today. He said, we used to march for our rights, and now we have people who are marching to take their own rights away and to take rights away from everyone. It's very odd.
I don't think they know the difference between a semi-automatic and an automatic. If they did, they know that automatic guns have been banned for a long time, and semi-automatic, that's pretty much every gun now. So if you want a ban on semi-automatic guns, you're banning all guns, basically.
You do not need an automatic rifle to be killing game.
Well, automatic rifles are illegal.
Semi-automatic rifles. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Semi-automatic, obviously there is a difference. One trigger pull, one bullet. But I think when it comes to Second Amendment, it's more about self-preservation and self-defense, right?
No. I live in this country 30 years, and I never use the gun, and I don't feel it's okay use the gun for nobody.
What about the Constitution, though, and like the rights?
The Constitution is okay. The Constitution is like the Bible. You believe.
What?
And you believe in the Constitution. You can kill people. It's okay. You can kill.
It's okay to kill each other when you're trying to fight for your country or your land, or
What?
But when it comes to me shooting you, then it's a crime.
The truth is,
yes,
this is all based on culture. And these people, they actually believe that gun control can work, but all empirical evidence shows otherwise. The Washington Post actually came out with a fact check on Marco Rubio, and they found that no recent gun law would have stopped any mass shooting.
You don't need an assault rifle. You don't need a civilian doesn't need a. I have face tattoos. Like, I don't need to be owning a gun. I'm irresponsible already.
I feel like I'm in a zombie sci-fi horror movie where people are programmed robots, like the tech companies and the media just wound them up, and then they march and shake their hands and do whatever the TV tells them.
What's going on here?
What did you see? No guns. Fuck Trump and eating fish.
Okay.
My sign is reversible. Just like the Russian-styled R, that the NRA is indeed BS and is funneling Russian money to have gotten Trump elected. So we got to get this guy out of office.
I hadn't heard that.
All right,
before.
there's a new theory.
The NRA has been touching base with the Russian pro-gun movements. At least that's what I've heard.
Alberto, uno de los asistentes. Alberto, ¿cuál es el mensaje?
I don't speak Spanish. Come on.
CNN es muy falso. Muy malo, muy malo.
Bueno, ahí tenemos uno que no todo el mundo está de acuerdo.
What if a criminal came into your house with a gun? You'd be at a disadvantage.
Indeed, but that's just, I guess, the bad luck of my life.
Indeed.
Circumstance or whatever. It had to happen. I don't know.
Indeed.
Run, shelter, and hide, shelter.
And the last one would be if I run, say someone's breaking into my house, I would go into the deepest, darkest room in the house and hide. Then they come any closer and I have a gun, I shoot them. Do you not agree with that plan?
I don't agree with that. I would never shoot anybody.
Even if they're breaking into your house and have a gun themselves?
No, I would not shoot them.
Well, I guess we're different there.
I think a lot of Republicans think it's all about banning guns and completely disregarding the Second Amendment or repealing the Second Amendment, and it's not about that.
It's not a question of abolishing the Second Amendment or taking people's guns away.
You know, because the point is not to ban guns.
It's not about taking guns away from people. No one's trying to do that.
I'm Australian. I am from Australia. Wait, what does it say? I can't read it.
I'm from Australia to say gun laws work.
Well,
I know that in Australia...
Australia is an obvious one.
Australia did it and was very effective.
I hate how they bring up Australia because the government basically forced people to bring up their guns. And according to gunfacts.info, homicide and firearm crimes actually increased after the firearm ban.
You said don't take guns away. Australia basically had a mandatory buyback.
Well, they had a mandatory buyback combined with a fantastically popular voluntary give back.
Yes. Okay, you get the idea. These are all these people are all at the same protest. Every single one of them's got something different to say. Every single one of them has a different impression as to why they are there. So, how does that work? I mean, forget about being on the same page. You got people, the NRA is working with Russia. The NRA is a terrorist organization. Ban all guns. No, don't ban all guns. Ban all automatic guns. Well, they're already illegal. Oh, I meant semi-automatic. Get rid of Trump. I mean, everybody's there for... This wasn't a protest for any specific reason. This was a teenage outing. Everybody had a different reason for being there. All right, I'll give you a little bit more when we come back. Don't go anywhere because at the end, I'm going to ask for your impression. All right? All right. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Eric Bushman standing by in the WBAP newsroom. Very latest breaking news, and we'll check that afternoon drive on News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 2:32 the time. Good afternoon. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion, your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. Putting you right in the middle of one of the largest March for Our Lives protests in the nation Saturday, Los Angeles. I just played a little bit of it for you. I'm not through because I want you to get the full feel. You know, I want you to get the smells, the sights, everything from March for Our Lives. So far, everyone that Fleck has been talking to has a different perspective as to why they're there. You know, I remember protests when I was in college. I remember that. You know, anti-war this and burn your bra this, and I didn't mind that one too much. But, I mean, there were a lot of them, right? But at least everybody protesting knew why they were protesting. So far, everybody's on a different page. All right, let me get your calls very quickly, and then I'm going to take you back and I'm going to drop you right in the middle of this protest. Bill in Blue Mound. Almost messed up your name there, Bill. How you doing?
I'm pretty good, Rick. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
I'm a first-time caller, been a long-time listener. I've got a few statements I'd like to make. All these children out here protesting and the woe is me, and you know it's all about them all the time. But nobody's saying anything about the families affected, like the killed children's families, or even the shooter's parents. If he has parents that they have to deal with, or maybe is there going to be civil suits coming? Nobody's recognizing these people.
Well, Bill, if I may, I'll drop this in. With these hundreds of thousands of people from coast to coast, the first thing I thought about was, wow, we're not really raising critical thinking kids anymore. I wonder about the quality of their education. That's number one. Number two, man, every Democrat in the zip code is there getting people registered to vote. This is a total movement, not about gun rights, not about gun control, about creating a new voting bloc for the Democrats. That's what this is about.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. That brings me to another point with these kids that some of them are bullies, like this David Hogg. Right. And I believe there was another one that had a little confrontation with Senator Rubio. and he was really bullying Rubio. I mean, you could just hear it in his voice the way he was talking over him, and little these things are kind of bothering me. So I want to start my own movement, and I want to reuse a term name that's already out there that is really amounts to no good. It's called DACA. But I want to change it for Dads Against Child Assailants, because it's these kids killing other kids and trying to blame somebody else for it. Somebody needs to stop these murderous teenagers from going into schools and shooting them up, and these bullies.
Well, listen, I can only say this. I've got a 5-gallon bucket of rocks, and I know how to use them. So, don't mess with my kids.
Yeah, the only problem is half the kids are probably already stoned in class.
Well, that may be true, too. Bill, I appreciate the call very much. Thanks, my friend. I'll look forward to the next one. All right, you ready? I'm going to drop you right in the middle of the Los Angeles March for Our Lives protest.
No more mass shootings.
Not one since.
But is it fair to say that there were not that many mass shootings before that? And
there was one when one is enough, right?
Yeah.
One is enough.
So what's really interesting to me is I spoke to an LAPD officer, and they told me that most gun crimes in Los Angeles are actually done with illegal guns, and nobody here cares about that. There's millions of illegal guns. Most crimes are done with illegal guns. No legislation is going to stop any illegal gun, but nobody here cares.
Absolutely, and they try to fix that. They made a thing called Project Exile, which is basically giving harsh, strict penalties for people that illegally possess a gun. But the Democrats didn't like it because they said it was, significantly targeting minority communities.
All this talk about gun restrictions and gun reform, they always call it common sense gun reform, which to me doesn't seem too commonsensical.
And I think that the overall thing that people are trying to say is basically, common sense gun laws where, somebody who should not be able to, have a fully auto assault weapon. I think that's pretty even with the
Well, fully auto is civilians aren't getting fully auto weapons. In the Parkland shooting, the most recent case, do you think the failure was in our gun laws or the enforcement of our gun laws? Because the police had 39 times they were alerted that this kid had some issues. The FBI was given a month before, hey, this kid's going to be a school shooter. He said so. He has his guns. He's posting on social media. So I think in this case, if we had actually enforced our gun laws, we would have maybe prevented this rather than trying to not have a gun in this kid's hand.
98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. The gun-free zones doesn't work. The gun regulation doesn't work. Chicago has the most amount of crime, gun violence, with the most amount of gun regulation.
What organization are you with?
I'm with Fleckus Talks.
With what?
Fleckus Talks.
What is that?
It's a YouTube. Dr. Unicorn! Dr.
Doc-
Unicorn is here.
Dr.
He's
Unicorn.
back. And everyone's sign is like, stop this now, not one more. And it's like, yeah, everyone agrees. And when it comes to actual solutions, like I'll say, oh, should we put an armed security person at schools? And they're like, what is this, like a prison? I think having armed security in schools is a good idea?
No.
No?
No.
I think having an armed presence in high schools is absolutely idiotic.
I don't think fear is a good place to learn. I personally would never want to go to school where I had to
actually
worry
don't
about,
either. That's I agree.
My teacher's gun going off by accident.
And the idea of teachers
Shoot
having guns,
myself
it's
in
like,
the foot.
do you think an 18-year-old could disarm me? I mean, I'm in pretty good shape for a 60-some-year-old.
You are. But do you think there's anyone in the schools that you work with who would be more capable with a gun?
I think that is a priority. It's just not a priority that should be there. I should be concentrating on teaching. I should be concentrating on... It's not an armed camp.
Do you think an on-site security with a gun, concealed carry, is not a bad thing?
I think our schools aren't prisons, so let's stop treating them like that.
Yeah. Our banks aren't prisons. Our airports aren't prisons, and we have security there.
Cool. Yeah, those aren't schools now, are they? Schools should be a safe zone.
Yeah, so shouldn't we protect our schools if they want to be a safe zone? There's kids there.
We absolutely should protect our schools through good policy, not through arming people with guns in school.
But people who break the laws and have guns and want to do harm to people don't follow gun laws. If it says, hey, no guns in the school, they're not going to be like, crap. The armed security officer on site took him out in like 30 seconds. He was the only death.
He took him out, yeah.
Like, that's what happened. And that's like how it should go, I think.
It's just the conversation and the language on a human life is just very interesting. Like, it's just so fickle. It's just numbers.
It's just
numbers.
numbers.
And it's not. Like, we just need to talk about how we can change it.
Bloody
and maybe
numbers.
that's
To talk about changing the entire culture, it's like I'm talking about how to protect these kids on Monday. It's like if you want to talk about the gun culture in the U.S., like that's a big conversation. That's a whole different debate. And to change people's... And I want to actually solve the problem, not say, oh, people should be better, people shouldn't care about guns.
When it comes down to it, it's hit or miss. I don't think it actually makes us safer to have armed security officers.
If you're saying that people should have less guns, and then the cops have the guns only, and then the cops aren't running into the school, it's like, where do
I think we should have cops in schools, and whether or not they ran into the school, I don't know. I'm not a policeman.
What are you finding when you talk to these people? What's the common thread?
The common thread is they actually don't want dialogue.
The solution is the public doesn't need machine guns, automatic weapons.
That's illegal already.
Huh?
Machine guns are illegal already.
Assault weapons,
Assault weapons are semi-automatic.
All right, I'm going to be going in March, and I see where we're going.
Come on,
Yeah,
dude.
he's out.
It's been great.
Don't press me on the facts, dude.
He's out. He's out. You, in general, the outfit, what's up with the outfit?
I'm not talking.
My favorite sign of the day.
I'm not talking, man.
Less hog, more Kashuv, basically.
Totally agree with that. What does that mean?
Basically, they're Kyle Kashuv and David Hogg are two of the students from Stoneman Douglas High School, and I think that Kyle Kashuv is being very productive in the fight for gun reform, and I don't think David Hogg is really. I don't think he's trying to reach across the aisle and actually make something happen. I think he's saying a lot of divisive things. There's a right and wrong way to go about the cause, I guess.
You're out here for a reason. I want to hear why you're out here.
It's the Donald Trump is worse than Hitler, girl.
Donald Trump is worse than Hitler.
Donald Trump is worse than
All right,
Hitler.
another Fleckus Talks in the books. Thank you guys for watching. Please
All right.
like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. There's a new one coming soon. Fleckus Talks.
All right, we got to call into Flecka. He may be on with us. Donald Trump is worse than Hitler. That'll stop those school shootings. Well, there you go. I gave you quite a bit of time to spend with the protesters in Los Angeles. March for Our Lives. Everybody's on a different page. This guy knows automatic weapons, most civilians can't go get. The other guy thinks you can get automatic weapons. Somebody else, I'm not sure, don't put guns in school. Everybody's on a different page. At least in the late 60s and 70s, everybody was on the same page. They knew how to throw a protest. This is just a bunch of kids that really don't know. They're being manipulated by the left. Donald Trump is worse than Hitler. What is that got to do with anything? All right. When we come back, we'll take your calls. Yeah, I have to be careful what I say. As a talk show host, I've found out people are predisposed to hear what they want to hear. Even if you don't say it, they'll hear it. So we'll take your calls. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. I'll tell you exactly why I think this thing has gotten so big so quick, and we'll take your response as well. All right, 2:47 the time. Glad you're along. In Wisconsin, they're starting the 50 Miles More March for stricter gun control laws. This is what I think. I think these kids are being manipulated, choreographed. Over 90% of the March for Our Lives protesters are able to vote. So it's no surprise that there was voter registration at each and every march. Which way do you think that's going? All right, let me get to your calls. Joanne in Boyd. Joanne, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Joanne?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good.
I would just like to say I am so sick of all these kids protesting about this shooting in Florida, because I think that the kids in that school should hold themselves some responsible for not reporting that kid. They all knew what kind of kid he was. So you know what? If you're going to protest, stand up and take a little bit of responsibility for not reporting to someone this kid was like he was. I'm just so sick of hearing it's the gun's fault. It's President Trump's fault. It's everybody's fault. But you know what? You're old enough to take responsibility for some of that yourself.
Well, it's not as though we didn't know that this kid was unhinged. What was it, 39, 40 times police were called? We dropped the ball. And when I say we, authorities dropped the ball.
True, but I think the kids should have been standing up and saying, There's something wrong with this kid. We see him every day. We know this. Go to the teacher. Go to the resource person in school, and go to your counselor and tell somebody. And they did not do that.
Well, I don't know if they did or not, Joanne. It's not been reported that kids in school said, yeah, we figured he was crazy, but I don't know, so I can't comment. But just listening to 7-8 minutes of the protest, not one of those kids was on the same page as another kid. Everybody was there for a different reason. It sounded like. First of all, when did we decide in this country that teenagers make legislation? Certainly you want to take their ideas, their concerns, and if you're a Democrat, you want to tell them anything they want to hear to get them to register to vote. But since when did we do that? I mean, I'll be honest with you. What's the next step here? You had your march, you had your protest. What's next? Voting? I guarantee you, from the left's perspective, that's exactly the next step. If calling for stricter gun control, I mean, you can do that all day long. It has the potential to have an immediate impact on the political landscape. Not only when a lot of these demonstrators reach the age to vote, 90% of them supposedly can already vote. There was a professor, a sociologist, on Morning Joe. That is the biggest waste of airtime I think I've ever seen in my life. But it is it's on the air. People watch it. She based her thesis on a study conducted on the demographics in the march in Washington. Showed while young people mobilized people to participate, less than 10% of the people in the crowd were actually under the age of 18. That means that more than 90% of them could actually vote today. And I promise you, the Democrats are not going to let this go to waste. I don't know how we went from a school shooting to the NRA is a terrorist organization to Trump is worse than Hitler. I'm sorry. None of this happened by accident. Bob, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Bob?
Hey, I'm doing great. I've got a potential solution. You can't have a potential solution, but it's a try. You are one of the best in the business of what you do that melts down everything into a concise thing. I'm also a Rush fan. WBAP puts on a hell of a show all day long.
Thank you for that.
And but I think since we all agree that kids are not being taught enough, and they don't know enough to even know what they're doing out there in a thing like this weekend, I think it would be good if you devoted, and Rush and other people in the industry devoted about a quarter of your time specifically to talk down. I don't mean that belligerently, but to talk down to the people that are hearing you in simplified manner of what conservatism, what constitutionalism, and also about these things like gun control and this and that and the other, and put it into words, because I know that half the people, and you're one of the most listened to shows in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and even all over Texas. But I think the way we can help this, I mean, changing schools takes lots of time, but kids are in school, 2/3 of the year, but the other third, if they or their parents, and this is the most important thing, their parents, if they will listen and gain some knowledge of how to think, with the right thing. And
well, Bob, here's the deal. It's not changing schools. It's changing the education system. I mean, the government's got to be happier than anybody about this. You know, they have been trying to dumb kids down for the last few generations because they don't want critical thinkers. They don't want pushback to authority. And that's exactly what they've got now. They got hundreds of thousands of kids out here protesting things they don't even understand. They don't get it. They don't, and you can't put it on them, but why would you go to a protest when you weren't even educated about what it was you were protesting? And by virtue of that recording, everybody the guy talked to was there for a different reason. Now, if you want to go out and, you know, protest, hey, I hate the government, I hate this, I hate that, I got nothing against that. Do that all day long. But at the end of the day, you could tell by that these people didn't even know what they were talking about. It's not so much changing school, it's getting government out of school, as far as I'm concerned. And educating. Do those kids sound educated about this issue? No, they don't. All right. 2:55 the time. I don't know if you made it to March for Our Lives or not. I just had to miss it. I just, got right by me there. If you went, love to hear from you. I'm sorry, I don't. What's next? That's the big issue for me. How many kids got registered to vote by some very well-meaning Democrat out there? See, that's what this is about. That's what this is about. The Democrats never letting a good crisis go to waste or exploiting 17 dead kids by manipulating, orchestrating, and choreographing this whole thing. And, oh, by the way, are you registered to vote?
Rick Roberts starts right now.
Every classroom has been equipped with a 5-gallon bucket full of Riverstone. If an armed intruder attempts to gain entrance to any of our classrooms, they will face a classroom full of students armed with rocks.
There you go. That's the way they handle it. You don't have to worry about semi-auto rocks, I guess. I'm not making light of this other than to say, kids, you're being worked. You're being played. You know, quite honestly, I don't know how did the NRA get involved with this? You think one of these kids brought up the NRA?
That's exactly how it happened.
Exactly how it happened? One of the kids brought it up? Yeah, they were talking about 17 of their classmates being killed. Well, it's the NRA's fault. You think some kid came up with that? I guarantee you no kid came up with that. The NRA is a terrorist organization, according to the protesters. Trump is worse than Hitler. I'm sorry. Are all the ovens underneath the White House? I mean, kids, I understand, man. You got a right to be upset, but you're getting played big time. And if you don't think the Democrats are using every bit of this to create new voting blocks, you're laboring under a sad misconception.
The NRA represents a small minority, but it has a stranglehold on Leader McConnell, on Speaker Ryan, and if they were simply to let the bills come to the floor, they would pass.
Now, who do you think that was? Yes, little Chucky Schumer. That's who that was. In the big mix, you've got to tell the kids the truth. Kids, you're being played just like the African-American neighborhoods were 50 years ago. You're being used just like the black communities were being used by the Democrats 50 years ago. You're being played just like they played the black community. The only thing different is the issue. You say, well, what would it be like if Obama was in office? Would Obama cut through all the facade? Would he tell these kids exactly what's going on? Would he say, look, that doesn't have anything to do with a gun. It has to do with value or lack thereof of human life. What do you think Obama would have to say? Oh, here he is.
A number of the young students in this school, Parkland, organized a rally. They decided we're not going to be silent victims of the gun violence that is so pervasive in the United States. We're going to do something about it. And these are young people, they're 16, 17 years old. And today, there was a march in Washington with hundreds of thousands of people. And these rallies were duplicated all around the world. And this was all because of the courage and effort of a handful of 15 and 16-year-olds who took the responsibility that so often adults had failed to take in trying to find a solution to this problem. And I think that's a testimony to what happens when young people are given opportunities.
This guy couldn't tell the truth if his life. They're not 15 and 16-year-olds. They've already been gauged at 90%. 90% of all the participants that took place yesterday are able to vote. That's why Chucky Schumer and every other Democrat is falling over themselves, stumbling and bumbling, rolling around, trying to get in front of a camera to tell these kids just how brave you are. You're doing exactly the right thing. They're getting played. Kids, you're getting played just like the blacks got played for 50 years. And that's almost a crime in itself. All right, let's go to Carla in Gainesville. Carla, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
Good.
Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm a little nervous. I'm sorry.
No, you're doing fine.
Frustrated.
Doing fine. You're doing good.
Well, I just wanted to say that all these kids that are doing all these marches and protesting and everything, you have every right to do that. But before you do, you need to really understand what you're talking about. They're talking about our president being worse than Hitler, and they have no idea. My mother grew up in Greece with the Nazis' invasion, and you can't even begin to imagine what those people grew up with and lived with and died with. She walked to town every day, hoping she got there in time to have some milk and bread left. Some days it was there, and some days it wasn't. Some days they had nothing. She walked around people that were dying or had already died as a little girl. You know, I mean, her father was walked to the firing squad. You covered your windows in dark and tried to be very quiet, hoping that nobody was coming to your door. And you looked over your shoulder all the time because somebody was going to tell one of the police or Nazis that you were a traitor, and off you went. That was the end of you. And that's just kind of a tiny glimpse into the kind of life that she grew up with. And she's not the only one by any means, and she was fortunate enough not to have to go to any kind of concentration camp or anything like that. I mean, really stop and open your eyes before you start to talk about how bad we have it here. We're so blessed to be here and to live in a place where we have the right to say what we think, whether we know what we're talking about or not.
But that's not what kids are being taught today. They're being taught the diametrically opposed narrative to that.
It is so true.
I mean, we're the root of all evil. We're their aggressor. I have a friend whose parents were Holocaust survivors, still had the tattoos on their wrists. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would take exception with the statement Trump is worse than Hitler. But these are kids. These are teenagers, and they haven't been taught anything when it comes to the country.
Yeah, they have no idea about our history or anyone else's history. All they know is somebody hurt their feelings or somebody said something they didn't like or there's a big rally, let's go.
And, I understand that and I get it, but the next step are all these woefully uninformed on this issue, maybe not in science and math and so on, but on this issue, all these woefully uninformed teenagers are going to now go vote. What do you think they're going to vote for?
I'm terrified. I'm terrified that that's my future. Those are the kind of people that are going to decide where I'm going to be as an old person.
Well,
and what my grandchildren are going to be involved in.
Well, the black community this last election, they finally said enough is enough. Yes. You've been promising everything for the last half century. We have voted for you almost exclusively, way over 90%. We get a toy at Christmas, a turkey at Thanksgiving. You drive off in your new SUV to the, the nice homes that are in the suburbs. You haven't done anything for our community. The schools are in shambles. The infrastructure is crumbling. The black community finally got it. And I'm afraid it's going to take that same course of action with these young people. This is a national movement. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, they stopped reaching the black community because they've opened their eyes and they see what's happened to them in their belief of that group. And now they're after the children because they haven't experienced any of that. All they know is what they've been told by someone in a small group who has a loud voice.
And they've been organized, manipulated, choreographed by the left. I'll say this out loud. The Democrats were, for the last 50 years, the new slave masters of the 21st century. They were. Why? Because they tried to control people by what? Taking away their hope. They're going to do the same thing to kids in reverse. You are the new wave. You are the new revolution. This is what you say. This is how you vote. This is what this is about. So if you've got a 17, 18-year-old, don't let them get played like this. They don't have to vote for Republicans if they don't want, but don't let them be the fodder, the political fodder of a political party. All right, 18 minutes after the hour, 3:18 the time. I'm still reeling. A school superintendent goes before the state legislature. Forgive me, it wasn't in Florida. It was in Pennsylvania. And testifies, I want to equip each one of my classrooms with a 5-pound bucket of rocks so that if an armed active shooter comes in, he'll be stoned. There's nothing. No, I'm not making it up. Somebody said you're making that up. I'm not making that up. I'm not making it up at all. That's what he said.
Every classroom has been equipped with a 5-gallon bucket full of Riverstone. If an armed intruder attempts to gain entrance to any of our classrooms, they will face a classroom full of students armed with rocks, and they will be stoned.
All right. Would you feel comfortable sending your kid to that superintendent's high school?
No.
Good Lord.
The stones should at least have points on them so they'd hurt.
I believe the David and Goliath thing, but that was a totally different deal. Let's go to your calls. Mark in Richardson. Mark, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great, Rick. My head's reeling, too. Listen, I have a couple points, and then you can comment. First of all, the way you listen to the guy, he said any gunman trying to come in here will be met with students with rocks, and they will be stoned. So it sounds like the kids sit around smoking bongs, and anybody's going to meet a bunch of stoned kids with pebbles when he walks into the classroom.
Evidently, he's never heard the term taking a knife to a gunfight. I don't get this.
No. Plus, the athleticism of these kids. Half of the kids are going to get killed with a rock in the back of the head because they can't throw. They aren't athletes. They probably, anyway, they're going to hit in the back of the head. They're going to get cracked by some kid that has no idea how to throw. Anyway, ask these kids, call down Hitler. What do Lenin, Stalin, Mussolini, Mao, Castro, and Hitler all have away the guns, right?
Okay, Mark, you cut out on me there. You must be on your cell. Say that again if you would.
I was saying that you ask these kids that compare Trump to Hitler, ask them what Lenin, Stalin, Mussolini, Mao, Castro, and Hitler all have in common, and it's that they took the guns, right?
Yep.
Secondly, they said Obama
okay, Mark, we're losing your signal, unfortunately. If you get in a clear area where we can hear you, give me a call back. And hopefully you can get in because I want to hear what you have to say. Mark, thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. Tim in Dallas. Tim, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Tim?
Oh, doing great, Rick, and thank you so much for taking the call.
You bet.
You made me think of a couple of things that you said. And, if you think about it, you and I at our ages, and I am older than you, 2.5 generations we've lost because we've dumbed down education. They can't think on their own. Whatever they're told or hear over and over and over, that's what they run with. And that's the biggest travesty I think that we have done is the kids can't think for themselves because we haven't taught them how to think.
That was by design. That wasn't by accident. That is exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why, when I say if my kids were of high school age, I'd pull them out of school. People email me all the time, that's not fair to teachers and so on. I'm not indicting the teachers. I don't like a government-run school system.
You've got a good point there, and that's something that we don't think about because a lot of people want to be on the take from the government. Give me this, give me that, instead of being resourceful on their own. And we've got to bring that back into our national life because we're ruining things. It's going to be just following like Rome and all the other great democracies that went down after about 250 years.
That's about right. I mean, people, I have nothing but respect for teachers. They're certainly not doing it so they can retire at 42 and move to Barbados. But the cost, at least for me, is way too high to have a government-run school system. And you're seeing it come to fruition right now. Exactly right. You can't miss the Constitution. You can't miss the Declaration of Independence. You can't miss the Bill of Rights if you were never taught what they were. You can't miss something you didn't know you had.
That's right. And we've all heard that, if you hear something over and over, you're going to begin to believe it. And that is really a travesty because you have to be able to think for yourself. And that's what this country was created for, was to let people have that capability. Our Constitution is a wonderful document, but we don't follow it. And
no, the people in D.C. don't even follow it.
Yeah, well, they can't even read it.
Yeah,
I dare say they can't read, period. But I'm not going to be tacky.
No, you're not far off. I mean, look, school is much different now than when you and I went to school.
Oh yeah,
it's much more politicized. Everything is an event. There are no perpetrators, only victims, and that is not by accident. That's by design. Another good example was the ridiculous, if you're a boy and you feel like a girl, you can use a girl's bathroom. Obama sent that letter out to, the cost of government-run education, at least for me and my kids, is way too high.
I've been fortunate enough to work in a museum as a living history person. And I am amazed because I see the difference when I see kids coming in from private schools, home schools, et cetera, versus the ISD. And I'm not going to say much against the ISD other than the fact the education that I got through high school in Dallas took me what would be equivalent of an associate's degree, 2 years of junior college.
Yeah.
And the kids I see coming in to the museum today, the ones who are in private schools are prepped ahead of time by teachers and parents. And a lot of the kids have got the curiosity to get on the internet and read about the Wiley Post, the Amelia Earharts and Lindberghs and so forth. And so they're ready with good questions. And the others could care less if they're there. They're playing with their little phones. And I always ask them to turn them off when they come in. And
I got to ask you before I have to break. You mentioned Wiley Post, Lindbergh, and Amelia Earhart. Do you work in an aviation museum?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. I got a little tidbit for you. You remember what Lindbergh's plane that he romanced Anne Morrow before they got married? He used to fly to Mexico to quarter. It was called the Romancer. I think it was a Ford. No, it wasn't a trimotor. I can't recall.
Trimotor.
I can't recall what it was. But in any case, my grandparents were coming home from church when they were dating in Wichita, Kansas. And my grandfather said, will you marry me? My grandmother said, yeah, if we can get married in an airplane. They just happened to stop and look up because when a plane went by back in the 1920s, that was a big deal.
Sure.
He got a pilot by the name of Charles Ludlow. He got a minister by the name of Reverend Kuntz. And he and my grandmother got married in Charles Lindbergh's plane, the Romancer, over Wichita New Year's Day, 1929. He just happened to work at Beechcraft at the time, and the plane was there for something. I don't know what it was. But it was on the front page of the Wichita Eagle and all that kind of stuff. Second couple in the United States to get married in an airplane. Well, fast forward 60, 70 years, I'm out in San Diego. Lindbergh's grandson was in town at the Aerospace Museum there. And I had a big poster made up of the front page with my grandparents and the pilot and so on. So I got Lindbergh's grandson to sign a picture of his grandfather's plane. It was pretty cool.
Must have been a travel error if I'm thinking about beach.
Yeah, could have been. Could have been. But yeah. Well, that's you're out there where we held the WeatherCon, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
It's a great place. If you've not been, you need to go out there. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool place, especially if you like aviation. Tell them where it's located.
All right, we're at Love Field at University and Lemon. There's a light there, so you can get in the parking lot pretty easy, but you'll see a Southwest airliner sticking halfway out into the parking lot with a tail, and the front of that thing is on the inside of the museum. So you can go through that airplane and walk back towards the end. When you get over the wing, you can raise the window shade and look out, and you're over parking lot.
Yeah,
there might be a car parked under the wing.
It's pretty cool. WBAP does a WeatherCon out there each year, and they've got space capsule, all kinds of stuff. Listen, I appreciate the call. I'm a little late on my break. Great talking to you. Hope you call again.
Take care.
All right, 3:28 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 3:34 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP, with you each and every day, Monday through Friday, from 2 to 5, your afternoon drive, broadcasting out of Dallas, Fort Worth, and, of course, heard all across the country. It's toll-free no matter where you are. This is what I thought I would do. In light of the March for Our Lives movement that, swept the nation on Saturday, and as I played for you about 8-9 minutes of what these people had to say, one thing became painfully apparent. Each one of them was on a different page, not knowing, well, you shouldn't go out and buy an automatic. Well, that's not the way it works. Okay, well, I meant, so they had no clue what they were talking about. I was raised around guns, have guns. If you want one, that's fine, unless you're a convicted felon and so on. But education is the key here. It's absolutely the key. For any meaningful change, if change is necessary, you've at least got to be educated on what you're talking about. The first thing I thought of was David Prince. He's the owner of Eagle Gun Range. If you don't know about Eagle Gun Range, you need to check it out. 2 locations, state-of-the-art facility, just inventory beyond belief, instruction, they've got it all. And David is the owner. I've been out there, actually spent some time out there. David was the one who raised, I think it was, $30,000 for the fallen Richardson police officer with a raffle he did. He's very community involved. You will not meet a nicer guy, and the wisdom he has on firearms is just unmatched. So I thought what I would do is walk you through the process, just like you're walking in the front door. You pick out a firearm. What happens next? Now, you teenagers, listen up. Parents, listen up so you can impart this information. With me is David Prince from Eagle Gun Range. David, how you doing?
Rick, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How much in total was raised for that fallen Richardson police officer?
$41,461. Thanks to you and your great listeners and our great customers.
Wow, $41,000. That's and that'll never bring him back, but maybe that'll make life a little bit easier to deal with.
Yes.
David, what I thought I would like to do, and I couldn't think of anybody else but you, somebody walks through the front door, all right? They can't buy automatic weapons, obviously.
Yes, sir.
So they look up on the wall and they say, okay, I want that rifle right there. And it's let's just say it's a Colt AR. Well, I'm saying that was 30 years ago for me. In Gillette, Wyoming, I walked in and bought a Colt AR-15 Sporter. Actually, I bought 2 of them because they were going out of business.
Guns.
Oh, very nice. Pre-banned. But let's say a guy says, okay, let's say a handgun. I want that handgun right there. Now knowing you, the first thing you're going to do is take him to the range, let him try it out and all that stuff before he buys it. But from the legal process, what happens next? Walk me through like I just walked in the front door.
Well, Rick, first thing we do is we greet them, thank them for being there because we're grateful for our customers. We walk them over and we talk to them and ask them what is it that they're really looking for. We don't assume anything. We don't try to match them up with something that we already have. We try to make sure that they're taken care of. We ask them, what's going on in their lives and what are they looking for. Once we determine what's going to be their best fit, we ask them for a valid driver's license. Are you a legal current resident of Texas? Because we will only sell a firearm to you if you have a current Texas driver's license. Then if they say yes, then we'll walk over and ask them. We put their information, if it's a valid driver's license. If it's not, we won't go any further until they get us a current valid driver's license. We check that license. We put them in our system. Then after they picked out the pistol, we have it in front of us. We put all the information down on a sheet, and then we take them to the computer, and they fill out a federal form 4473. After they completely fill it out, they answer a bunch of questions, whether they're a convicted felon, whether it's been adjudicated. There's a list of questions they have to answer, U.S. citizen. We then take that 4473 and we call NICS, the National Instant Criminal Background Check, as an arm of the FBI. We call that number, read off all the information that's in that 4473, and they, within 30 seconds to 3 minutes, will either give us a proceed or a decline. Usually, that's the normal. When they get really, really busy, it may take us a little bit longer. It may take up to 30 minutes to get a response. And we'll either proceed or decline. If it's a decline, we give them the case number and tell them, look, you need to call NICS. Here's the case number, and contest it. And about the majority of the time, once they contest it, they find out that there is a mixed identity or there's a mistake someplace, and they come back in and get the gun that they want. But no time do we ever sell a gun or a firearm without having a NICS background check unless they have a license to carry. If they've already gone through this background check, when you get a license to carry in the state of Texas or any place else, they do a background check for you. And that way it's already been done. So they probably walk in and ask them for the pistol and they want to do a background check. We asked if they have a license to carry, and they say, yes, we're able to take it without doing a current one. But no one can walk in and just buy a gun without a background check of some sort or another.
And a lot of talk, talking with David Prince from Eagle Gun Range, a lot of talk about expanding universal background checks. And I've noticed some recent news stories about what happens if somebody is convicted of something after they've already received a concealed carry. Is that picked up anywhere?
Yes. If they are convicted, then they lose their license to carry of felons and those type of things. They lose them. During that whole process, they're asked if they have a weapon. And it's against the law for felons to be in possession or around a firearm. So that's the law enforcement at that point has to determine whether they have the guns or not, or the firearms. So, but if they're convicted, that process is taken up in the law enforcement area then. Right. I know that we've had someone has called in and we've done a background check, and something has been sold to an individual that shouldn't have received it. There had been a mistake at FBI or the NICS check, and we give them the name, and they go out and take the gun back.
Well.
And that's extremely rare. Out of 6 years, that's happened once. If there was a mistake, or they later determined that they found further research found the person should not have had it, then they will go and pick it up.
So from your perspective, David, you feel like we've got all the bases covered here? Because, I keep hearing people talk about firearms when obviously they're not familiar with them. And, it's almost an education process before you can form an opinion on some cases.
It should be like that, like so many other things. You need to have some information before you start shooting your mouth off. Please engage brain before you put mouth in gear. So it's just sad to see people manipulate and use the children. Their enthusiasm, their youthful vigor. They abuse it, sick them on a situation that they have no knowledge on whatsoever. It's all an emotional. If you don't talk intelligently, you're talking emotionally, and that's the only two options. And unfortunately, these young people have not taken the time to get informed about a subject. All they're doing is reacting to what they've been told. Because you can't, the gun show loophole. There is no loophole. If you're at a gun show selling a gun and trying to make a profit, it's against the law. I mean, there's lack of law enforcement, but there is no gun show loophole. Our NICS system needs some help, yes, but the system is in place. It's just not properly being enforced. For once again, it gets back to, we've had the conversation. News just talked about we were short of police officers. We're short of FBI. We're short of a lot of things,
right, law
enforcement related. So we've got the systems in place to prevent people from getting guns. We just need proper enforcement of those systems.
David, it's always a pleasure. David Prince, owner of Eagle Gun Range. David, you got 2 locations. I know this isn't a commercial, but tell people where those are.
We're at 14400 Midway Road here in Farmers Branch, and then we have our first location in 491 West Valley Ridge in Louisville. And we're open 7 days a week, and we appreciate you and your listeners, and always honored to have chance to talk with you.
Well, David, it's my pleasure, and again, many thanks for what you did for that fallen Richardson police officer, and we'll talk again soon, my friend.
Always look forward to seeing you, sir.
All right, David Prince, Eagle Gun Range. We'll come back and take your calls next on News Talk 820 WBAP. No. All right, 3:49 the time. Welcome to Court of Public Opinion, the Rick Roberts Show. Let's go to Paul in Justin. Paul, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
Good, Rick. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Well, hey, I called on a while ago, been listening. Everybody's blaming the guns. Everybody's blaming the NRA. They're blaming Trump. They're probably going to blame you if you stay on the radio long enough. It's ignorant. But what I have not heard, I absolutely have not heard this. Those kids were failed. They were failed by their school administration. They were failed by the police department. They were failed by the FBI. They were failed by that other Cruz, by his family. But nothing's been. I haven't heard anything about that. I don't understand where they come up with it's the NRA. NRA is out killing kids. I have a 12-year-old son, and me and him had this discussion. And I thought, you know what? The school he goes to doesn't teach all this. Go out and take 17 minutes and get out of class for 17 minutes while the teachers take a break type thing. But I asked him if he understood what AR stood for. And he told me, he said assault rifle. I said no, and I explained to him it was for Armalite rifle. And he was asking me other questions. We kind of got into the discussion, and I didn't want to go all full political on him. But I just explained to him, he shoots guns. He has a semi-automatic 22. He has a 410 bolt action. He has a 20-gauge pump shotgun. So he understands the firearm safety. And it just blows my mind. He told me he went to school. He's in 7th grade, went to school. I was asking his friends if they knew what AR was. And the answers that he got he goes, Dad, they just don't even know. And I said, that's an exact problem of what's going on today. Nobody that's out there marching, talking, barking, screaming, protesting has a clue on what they're talking about.
Yep.
That'd be like me and you going out and protesting makeup. I'm pretty sure you know about as much about his makeup as I do. I don't know anything about it. I just know women use it, and it's expensive. It blows my mind. Where's the accountability to the people that failed these dead children at the school? The sheriff's department. We heard gunshots going. Well, okay, you're going to arm kids with rocks, and and they seem to be more secure than that, than another person trained with a firearm with body armor going in to protect kids being shot at. If my kid had been in that school, or if I had been going by that school, I can honestly say there's a lot of doubt. I would be going in because that's our future. If you kill our future, we're dead too.
Yep.
It just floors me that the accountability is not being held to where the problem is, and these kids are absolutely uneducated on what they're speaking about. They're repeating things they have heard from talking heads.
Well, they're being manipulated by the left in order to create new voting blocks. 90% of these participants in Saturday's march, protest, whatever you want to call it, are now able to vote. So when Obama said, well, they're 15 and 16, no, 90% of them were 18 and above. And if you think the left isn't absolutely aggressively manipulating them to go register, they were registering to vote at every single protest. And you're right. 39 calls to cops on this kid. You know, there were plenty of red flags. And when we come back, remember the Orlando nightclub shooter? Remember that guy walked into a gay nightclub, shot and killed 49 people? That came up in the protest yesterday or Saturday as well. Well, I've got something to tell you about that. This was more than a red flag. The house was on fire, and it was totally ignored. So don't blame it on the gun or the NRA. When we come back, I'll tell you exactly why we should have known 49 people were going to die at the hands of a guy that did all but lay it out step by step. I'll do that next. Rick Roberts, News Talk, 820 WBAP.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 4:03 the time. All right, I want you to listen carefully for a second. Just like with this shooter in Florida, police called to his house 39 times. It was obvious that this kid was off the rails and probably should have been, and I know it's very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, probably should have been confined based on the fact that he just wasn't right. Well, it was revealed this weekend. Remember the Orlando shooting? Guy walks into a gay nightclub, shoots and kills 49 people. 49 people. Now, this came up in Saturday's protest, rally, march, whatever you want to call it. You know, if it weren't for weapons like he had, we wouldn't. Okay, blah, blah, blah. You know, you can almost forgive them because they're teenagers. They're being used by adults, primarily on the left, being manipulated into a national movement. Well, I would suggest that maybe you need to look at the people a little harder. It was revealed that the Orlando nightclub shooter's dad was an FBI informant. And he brushed off his son's terror threats and comments as him just being, and I quote, stupid. The dad, revealed to be an FBI informant this Saturday, told authorities who were investigating Omar Mateen, before the attack, that the pro-terror comments that he made to coworkers were just examples, and again I quote, of him just being stupid. FBI Special Agent Martin, who was on the stand in the terrorism trial of Noor Salman, that was Omar Mateen's wife, this guy's son, said Omar's father, Sadiq, had called him while his son was being investigated for the comments in 2006, a decade before the attack. As a matter of fact, not only did they brush it off, but eventually determined he wasn't a security threat, and they even considered turning Omar into a confidential informant himself. So, with all due respect, kids, instead of, trying to draw in, and again, probably not your words, I don't think these teenagers came up with the NRA on their own, because they all say the same thing, don't they? The teenagers all say, well, if the NRA didn't contribute so much money to the Republicans, would you think they came up with that on their own? No, they're parroting something they heard someplace else. And by the way, the NRA is far from the largest donor I think, what are they, ranked like 11th, 12th, something like that. I don't know. Maybe we ought to take a look at what's behind the hardware. Sounds like we had plenty of notice with this guy, and Sadiq, his dad was an FBI informant. I'm guessing he's doing something else now. And the same thing with this kid in Florida. If we would put that much time, money, and resource into saying, okay, this kid's got a screw loose. He's sitting in his room playing school shooter videos. And by the way, isn't that, that's explosive cord. And what remains of a sawed-off barrel of a rifle, well, all of which, by the way, were laying in full view, plain sight in the Columbine shooters. Maybe then we would actually get somewhere. Grady, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Grady?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking, Rick. Hope you're doing well. I enjoy your show.
Thank you.
You played this last hour, and I'd kind of like to respond to a soundbite that you played by President Obama, and I'm wondering exactly how or what are these kids doing that adults are afraid to do.
What he's talking about, if you're just joining us, I was saying that these kids are being manipulated and used and played, much as the Democrats did the black communities. They're playing these kids as well, and Obama comes out and in some form of cheerleading effort saying these kids are courageous, doing those things adults won't do. What is that?
And I guess the catchphrase that I'm so tired of hearing now is they're increasing awareness. Okay, well, exactly what does increase awareness? I mean, does gun violence really need more awareness? I think it's probably pretty out there. And, something my dad used to always say, the whole thing is all hat and no cattle.
My grandfather used to say the same thing. As a matter of fact, since I've got you on the line, for those people that don't know what we're talking about, I'm not going to play the whole thing, just a second of it. This is exactly what Grady is talking about.
A number of the young students in this school, Parkland, organized a rally. They decided we're not going to be silent victims of the gun violence that is so pervasive in the United States. We're going to do something about it. And these are young people, they're 16, 17 years old. And today there was a march in Washington with hundreds of thousands of people. And these rallies were duplicated all around the world. And this was all because of the courage and effort of a handful of 15 and 16-year-olds who took the responsibility that so often adults had failed to take.
Okay, what does that mean? First of all, they weren't 15 and 16-year-olds. Independent surveys say that about 90% of the participants all across the nation were of voting age. That's your red flag right there.
Right. And really, raise your hand if you're for gun violence, please. Can we take a vote? Everybody for gun violence? And last thing, my dad's a retired educator. He in the summers he taught driver's education. Hey kids, if you die before you're 25, it's going to be in a car crash. Okay, statistically speaking, it'll be a car crash.
Yeah. Well, it's there's a story behind this story, Grady, and I think you were astute enough to pick it up. They didn't come up with the NRA on their own. They didn't come up with NRA donations to political parties on their own. Chucky Schumer, Obama, and everybody else coming out of the woodwork, cheering these kids on, is a crime in itself. It's like they've been victimized twice.
I agree.
Grady, good call. I appreciate it very, very much. At the end of the day, if you want to go out and yell and scream and all of that, that's fine. And you have every right to do that. And I'd be the last person to diminish your exuberance. Just know what you're talking about. I mean, the Orlando shooter making terrorist threats, his dad's an FBI informant. He was looked into. He's just being stupid. Oh, okay, well, we'll let that go. I mean, maybe we ought to be taking a look at each other instead of guns. I mean, obviously, gun control hasn't worked to the perfect end. It probably never will, because most guns that are used in crimes are illegal guns to begin with, which should tell you what? The lesson to be learned there is lock up your firearms, especially if you got kids. All right. When we come back, we're going to open up the lines. We'll let you. I know a ton of you have been waiting. We'll try to get your voice in the court of public opinion. You know, this has got to stop at some place, doesn't it? Either stop or let's try to take care of the problem. But you Democrats, you people on the left, you paid organizers, you know, how sad, how pathetic is it that you're exploiting the horrific tragedy in a school shooting for political ends? One person out there tell me that that's not what this is about. That is totally what it's about. Get as many of these 18-year-olds registered to vote Democrat as you possibly can, and then get them jazzed up. Oh, it's a revolution. You're changing the world. It's just the beginning. You're doing it all. Be sure and vote Democrat, by the way. 17 minutes after the hour, 4:17 the time. Let's go to David. David in Dallas. David, thanks for waiting. I appreciate your patience. How you doing?
Well, I appreciate your show, Rick. I guess, sir, I'm just not enlightened enough. And I guess I need the David Hoggs and his band of merry teens to teach me everything I don't already know about life.
All right, David, do you have me on speakerphone?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, because I got a lot of wind noise, it sounds like. There we go. That's better. Thanks.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's right.
I just wanted to say so, and I'm curious as to your opinion.
David, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's see if we can get a better connection with David. I don't want to lose him mid-sentence. Brian and Allen. Brian, how you doing?
Hey, Rick. So I've called a few times. Seems like usually you and I seem to have a similar opinion. I'm an engineer. I keep looking at politicians and lawyers trying to solve these things, and no offense, but what it comes down to is an engineer's got a job, and that job is simple: solve a problem, try and do it at the lowest cost, try and do it so that it's repeatable, and try and do it so that the customer is absolutely happy and will come back to you and your company. Right?
Sure.
That's what engineers do. So why can't we approach this like an engineer? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And again, as you're doing this stuff, you got to understand. I know a lot of salespeople. They love to say the customer's always right. Well, that's BS. What it comes down to is if the customer is always right, he wouldn't need your support. He wouldn't need your help. So, again, you got to go ahead and you got to go in there and you've got to provide a solution that actually is more than what they're able to do. The bucket of rocks idea, I mean, come on. I'm sorry. I don't know what the heck the guy was thinking.
Well, the sad part about that, he's a school superintendent.
That doesn't make him educated.
Well, he's in the position. How did he get that position is all I want to know.
Because he's a politician. That's what all the guys in charge of the educational things generally are. You got the people that love to teach and they like to keep in front of the kids. And then you got the politicians who love to end up moving into that, super expensive administration building and collecting a huge pension. But this is what I'm looking at. School safety. You look at this situation in particular. You can try and approach it in different ways. One way is you can say, what happened in this instance? All right, what would have stopped this eventual trail? And we've already seen a lot of different things, right? There was a program in the school that basically made and moderated the punishments compared to what it used to be so that kids would not go to jail, so that they would not go to prison. They didn't want so many kids going to prison, that school-to-prison pipeline, they call it. So they instituted their new program, and basically it said, we're going to slap our own kids on the wrist and then we're going to let them go, and so they're not going to actually face any real punishment. We have police, local police, constantly going out to this guy's house, we see that if they had gone ahead and followed up and actually done their due diligence and investigated properly, again, this event would have probably never happened. Another instance, we hear that the guy's been cutting himself, supposedly drinking gasoline. The very guy who didn't have the guts, and I'm sorry, I feel really bad for this Peterson guy, but he didn't have the guts to go in there. The very same guy also said, we cannot Baker Act this guy. We cannot put him in a mental institution to be evaluated. Why he came to that decision, I don't know, but there's 17 kids that would be alive if he had.
Right.
Okay? So all of these are possible things. The FBI, multiple tips, at least 2 that we know of. Again, in the end, all of these governmental things that should have caught this failed. So the real question is, who loves our kids? Who would have been there to save their lives given all of those failures? Because we can never count. And again, those are a hard job. When a guy shows he's cutting himself, and then later on he says, no, that was just a scrape. And so it's not an easy thing to always see that stuff and really truly know it. So I'm not going to say that they all screwed up so bad that they all deserve to be fired. But let's say all of those things are potentially going to fail again. Who is there to save those children that would want to really do it? We know there was a coach there. He gave his life. I don't think there's a single kid that's out there on that stage talking about the NRA that wouldn't have said that if the coach had had a gun, that whole situation would have ended right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
No, you're exactly right. Exactly right, Brian. I can say this ad nauseum, and we will continue. It's not a gun problem. It's a people issue. No value for life, no value for human life, and hundreds of thousands of our kids. This is the scariest thing about this to me. Hundreds of thousands of our teenagers are being manipulated, coerced, scripted by the hard left. That's what this is. It's no different than what they did to the black communities 50 years ago. These kids are being played. They are becoming new voting blocks for the Democrats. The political landscape will forever be changed because of this. They don't know the difference between a musket and an AR-15, a handgun and a single shot. They don't know about anything. They just know what they've been told, what they've heard. Just like that piece I played for you, and I've got email after email asking what that was. We'll have it on, it'll be on the podcast. You can hear it in its entirety. All the kids that were interviewed, none of them were consistent. They all had something different to say. Up to and including Trump is worse than Hitler ever was. I venture to say most of these kids don't even know, from a historical perspective, what that statement means. Is Trump gassing people in ovens? I mean, come on. Part of this you can say, okay, they're teenagers. They've got a right to be, goofy for a certain length of time, but not, that kid, what's his name? Hogg? Is that his name?
Yeah, David Hogg.
David Hogg, yeah. He's become a national celebrity, a spokesperson for this movement. He doesn't speak for all these kids. He doesn't even speak for a majority of these kids. But you watch. Who do you think is choreographing him? Who do you think is manipulating him? Who do you think is showcasing him? You know what's going on. The Democrats have found, well, the blacks aren't voting for us exclusively anymore. We kind of lost our edge with the Hispanic population. What do we do now? We exploit a school shooting, and hundreds of thousands of new Democrats were registered this weekend. Hundreds of thousands. Washington, D.C. alone had a couple 100,000. More than that in L.A. It was all over the country. It wouldn't surprise me the final tally would be 1 million or so new Democrats were registered on Saturday at the expense of 17 young lives. Does that make sense to you? That's the part that I care about. You're never going to convince somebody that doesn't want to be convinced or somebody that doesn't want to be educated that guns are not the problem. You're never going to do that. All they know is they're loud, scary looking, run away. They don't want to be educated. They don't want to know anything about it. So, save your breath. Give out the message where you can. But there are some people, just like that one guy that said, I'd run to a dark room, and if the guy came in, I'd shoot him. And he said, no, I wouldn't shoot anybody. Not even if they were coming after you with a gun? No. Okay, there's no talking to someone like that. That is an ironclad pacifist, and they would give up their lives rather than defend it, or the lives of their family. I've talked to those people before. There is no rationale. You can't talk to people like that. All right. Why are conservative Christians sticking with President Trump after Stormy Daniels? I'll tell you why next. All right, 4:33 the time. Good afternoon. I'm Rick Roberts with you every day, Monday through Friday, 2 to 5, your afternoon drive for Dallas-Fort Worth. And, of course, heard all across the country. Glad you're along. Hope you had a good weekend. I received several emails. As a matter of fact, more than several. Hey, Rick, how come you're ignoring Stormy Daniels? Could it be you're trying to protect Trump? I'm not trying to protect anybody. I'm just trying to do a talk show. So I thought I'd address that. Why are conservative Christians still sticking with President Trump after Stormy Daniels? Well, if Stormy's lucky, she'll hit into a big payday here. And of course, 60 Minutes did their interview with the adult film actress, Stormy Daniels. Conservative Christians are being accused of being hypocrites. How many times a lot of calls come in that don't get on the air. I've been called a hypocrite time and time again.
A couple a day.
Yeah. So I'll answer you. How can so-called value voters, as they're known, continue to stand with Trump despite, the revelations that he allegedly had affairs with a porn star and a Playboy model and paid them for their silence? Well, I would imagine a lot of Christian leaders have gone too far in trying to rationalize Trump's past personal behavior. That's why I don't. Did he go out and rape people? Not that I'm aware of. That would change things. Excusing his offensive comments while in office? You know what? Most of that doesn't bother me. He's direct and to the point. He's got flaws. We all have flaws. He's not a slick politician, knowing just what to say and when to say it. I kind of like that. He does have one moral quality that deserves admiration. He keeps his promises, or tries. During the campaign, he pledged to do what? Defend religious liberty. And if you remember, religious liberty was coming under a lot of heat, had been for several years. He said he'd stand up for unborn life and appoint conservative jurists to the Supreme Court and the Federal Appeals Court. And he did exactly what he promised. The abortion rights lobby, whatever it's called, they complain that Trump has been relentless on this front, declaring his administration the worst. I'm sorry, can you show me the numbers on that? Generally speaking, and I don't attempt to speak for all Christians, but generally that's more important to most Christian conservatives than what the president may or may not have done with a porn actress back in 2006. Trump's election came, as I just mentioned, as religious liberty was under unprecedented attack. The Obama administration was trying to force the Little Sisters of the Poor to violate their religious conscience and facilitate payment for drugs and other contraceptives. And there was, Oberfell and Hodges, I think that case, where President Obama's Solicitor General told the Supreme Court that churches and universities could lose their tax-exempt status if they oppose same-sex marriage. Religious liberty was under attack, big time. Hillary Clinton promised to escalate those attacks. She declared at the Women in the World Summit that religious beliefs have to be changed. Excuse me? No. It's not your position to change any religious belief. Maybe the most radical threat to religious liberty ever delivered by a presidential candidate. Had Clinton won, she would have replaced a late conservative Justice Scalia with some kind of liberal knucklehead, giving the Supreme Court a liberal activist majority. Well, the impact would have been immediate. And the court, as they prepared to decide two cases crucial to religious liberty, that was the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Court, and there was another one. But the president is moving in a political time frame at a record pace to fill the federal appeals court with young conservative judges who are going to protect life and religious freedom for decades. He also fulfilled his promise to defend the Little Sisters from government bullying. He ordered the creation of the Conscious and Religious Freedom Division at the Department of Health and Human Services to do what? Protect the civil rights of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers who refuse to take part in procedures like abortion, reversing that Obama policy that required him to do that. And his Justice Department issued a 25-page guide to federal agencies instructing them to protect the religious liberty in the execution of federal law. Now, if he didn't do any of that, and he went the other way, like most politicians do, their political campaigns are all full of, pomp and circumstance about what they're going to do, and when they get in office, they do just the opposite. Had he done that, yeah, you might have a point. He reinstated and expanded the Mexico City policy, which prohibits U.S. foreign aid from going to groups that perform abortions in Mexico. I know that is one of those things you'd think would be a given. It wasn't. He signed legislation overturning an Obama regulation that prohibited sales from defunding abortion service providers. So, Trump has arguably done more in his first year of office to protect life and religious liberty and freedom than any modern-day president. So, religious conservatives stick with him despite Stormy Daniels. This is not to say that Christians don't think a culture and fidelity is important, but the culture of life is important too. So is a culture that is welcoming to religious believers rather than waging war on them like we saw under the Obama administration. No one's holding Trump up as a moral, guidepost. He's not the most religious president we've ever had, but he may be the most pro-religion president, if that makes sense. Christian conservatives are judging Trump not by his faith, but by what he does. And when it comes to life, liberty, and all of that, his works are pretty good. So, forget the Stormy Daniels thing. I don't know what I would have done if I were a billionaire playboy, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I don't know. I would hope that I would have, held the line, but I don't think anybody can answer that. It's what he has done since he's been president, not what he did as a billionaire playboy. And had he not come through with all these works, then I would imagine you'd have a point, have a leg to stand on. All right, let's go to Wade in Graham. Wade, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Wade?
I'm good, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
I'd called in. I've been hearing in and out of the truck all day and hearing the conversation about the administrator with the rocks.
Yes.
And I went to a class this weekend. It was about active shooter drills and that type of stuff, and how to handle. And this may be where this guy got the information from. They tell you that once you identify someone like that in your area, to throw something at them.
To throw something at them. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, to distract them because they have a set dream or a belief in their head. This is the way it's all going to go down. And when they come in, they're looking for one threat, and then they're going to go after that threat. Well, if someone else disrupts that threat, then there's a possibility that you have a chance of distracting them enough to where you can do whatever you need to do to take control of the situation.
Well,
and this is part of the Alice program that they're teaching a lot of businesses and a lot. It's something. Do you want to cow down in the corner with your hand over your head and let somebody take shots at you, or do you want to do something that's active that maybe be able to save your life or somebody else's.
Well, I'll be honest with you.
It has meat to it. I mean, are we going to be able to think of that in that situation? I don't know.
Well, you have the luxury at this point of planning in advance. Yeah, throwing the stapler or a book or whatever you have. Exactly. I mean, that's a last-ditch effort. But if you have the luxury of planning in advance, why would you face a guy with a 12 gauge with a stapler? That didn't make sense.
Well, what else are you going to do? You're going to stand there and let him shoot at you?
Well, no,
I'm not.
I would hope I would put myself in a situation where someone would be armed to take care of that.
I agree with that, and that's why I agree with putting officers in the schools or somebody in there that concealed carry, licensed to carry, police officers, trained individuals. Yeah, they should be there, but also a first round of defense. Give your students, give your children, give somebody something to maybe change that person's mind.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Wade. I just you listen, you see if it makes sense to you.
Every classroom has been equipped with a 5-gallon bucket full of Riverstone. If an armed intruder attempts to gain entrance to any of our classrooms, they will face a classroom full of students armed with rocks.
Yeah, armed with rocks. Don't come in here. We've got rocks. Of course, this guy's got several weapons. That was the superintendent of schools in Pennsylvania. Jeez. All right, 4:48 the time. Let's get right to your calls. Terry, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Terry?
I'm good. Hey, I'm just getting madder and madder listening to this whole thing with how they are using and abusing the young people in this country, using them as pawns. And I want to know, why can't the Republicans, the Tea Party, the conservatives get together and have our own marches with signs and banners supporting our Second Amendment gun rights and, pointing out the failures of the FBI and the, law enforcement? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well,
I think why.
Probably because most of us have jobs and can't take off that long.
Well, I would take off a day if I had to, and or go over a weekend to march for something like that. Republicans have consistently, for decades, had a PR problem, and we're not rabble rousers, like.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, and I said it before. Well, with the spending bill on Friday that I went nuts on. I said early on, if the Republicans can find a way to lose this, they will. And they did.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I felt kind of bad for Trump, when he got up there and said, I really didn't like this. I hated doing this. But, that's our leadership's fault. McConnell and Ryan, they backed him into a corner and left him hardly any choice. I just wish he'd have gone ahead and vetoed it. And we'd be having a totally different conversation now.
Yeah, we would. And, Ryan has never shown me much, and certainly McConnell hasn't either. But all he had to do was veto the thing and say, you know what? I'm at least going to veto this until somebody reads it. It's 2,200 pages long. It was finished 48 hours ago. Who read it? Nobody.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely absurd, and I don't understand why they can't do things the right way instead of, ramming this thing through at the last minute. It's just like the liberals did with Obamacare.
Well, one thing the liberals do well, they galvanize around an issue, even if they know it's wrong. You don't get dissenting viewpoints like you do with Republicans. The Republicans will throw anybody, including their own, under the bus, and I've never understood that. I don't know why they do that.
I don't get it either, but I sure hope that Trump learned his lesson with this, and we have got to find a way to get rid of Mitch McConnell.
Oh,
he sabotaged us in many, many, many times.
Well, this thing on Saturday went by without a lot of conservative comment, but I'm telling you right now, there is no telling out of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids in each city how many new Democrats were registered to vote.
Oh, yeah, it's disgusting. So we need to have some of our own, have some voter registrations going on.
Well,
people that support the Second Amendment.
As we get closer to the midterms, if the conservatives, and that includes Republicans, don't do something, they had it all. They had a majority in both houses, the White House, a record number of governorships. They're going to lose in November.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we are, and they better wake up and start supporting Trump like never before.
I agree with you, Terry. Thank you for the call.
All right.
All right. I'm glad you're getting upset, too. I know more people need to get upset. I'm sorry, but they do. Zach in Arlington. Zach, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing great. I just was kind of driving in the road laughing about putting rocks in a bucket and put them in the classroom. Think about it.
This guy's a school superintendent in Pennsylvania. He was testifying in front of the state legislature. Can you believe that?
No, if you have any common sense, think it out. There's a bucket of rocks in the class, a bucket full of rocks. The guy comes in shooting. The kids are trained to all run to the bucket. Now you got all your targets in one little pile.
This by the way is what, and I've played it probably too much, but this is what Zach is talking about. This is the superintendent of schools for a district in Pennsylvania testifying before the Pennsylvania state legislature.
Every classroom has been equipped with a 5-gallon bucket full of Riverstone. If an armed intruder attempts to gain entrance to any of our classrooms, they will face a classroom full of students armed with rocks, and they will be stoned.
This guy sounds really serious about it. Yeah, he's stoned. He's got to be to come up with that.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I just couldn't believe that. Amazing.
Zach, I appreciate the call very much. I mean, even if I believed that, I wouldn't say it out loud. I mean, would you? All right. What's going to happen? What's next? That's the question. What's next? March for Our Lives. They're going to trot that kid out, Hogg, I think his name is. They're going to trot him out every possible chance they get because he's the new face. He thinks he's the new face of students making a difference. I think one of them called it the new revolution. Wasn't that it? Yeah. He's the new face of the new voting bloc for the Democrats. That's exactly what he is. Nothing more, nothing less. He just doesn't know it yet.
We will take the big and we will take the small, but we will keep fighting. When they give us that inch, that bump stock ban, we will take a mile. We are not here for breadcrumbs. We are here for real change. We are here to lead.
Yeah. I'm going to be led by a 17-year-old. All right. God's blessings on each and every one of you, whether we agree or not. That's always my priority. Stick around. Mark Levin's next. I'll be back for your afternoon drive 2 to 5 tomorrow on News Talk 820 WBAP.
Just like us, soaking in the rain, baking in the sun. Don't quit till the job gets done. That's the only way I know. Don't stop till everything's gone. Straight ahead and never turn around. Don't back up, don't back down. A full throttle, wide open. You get tired and you don't show it. Dig a little deeper when you think you can't dig no more. That's the only way I know. That's the only way I know. That's the only way I know.